Hello again. Okay, so I mean, obviously the last video went up just a few minutes ago. This one just follows up. Essentially, we are now going to build a mission. And building a mission with this system is super easy. We're going to take this from the easiest possible perspective. On the assumption that you saw the previous video, there were really just these very precise units. You know, there were air-to-air units in this section, air-to-ground units in this section. There were some tanks, and a base, a multiplayer air base in this section, and there's some ground units like on-road units, a train, and another air base, a supply air base in this section, and it was exactly parallel on this side. And for this one, we're going to use just that. Like, we're not going to make any modifications. I have some very basic scenery in place. In fact, it's actually a little shorter. I kind of would like to pull the scenery back to here. Um, but we're just not going to do that because it takes some time, and I'm ready to do this video. So the mission is set up right now to be, and is already kind of built, um, to be kind of like just a very boring. There's a line of battle that's right here where I'm moving the mouse and where these icons are. There's some, Russian tanks right here. There's some German tanks right here, and that's like kind of it. It's really boring. So now we're gonna take this because this is kind of just like a packaged mission. Both sides are the same. It has all the different types of components that I've built at least so far, and we want to turn this into something a little bit more meaningful. And so what I like to do is I'd like to have this be the situation where the Germans are really just crossing the Don. Like, they've pushed through, and this Kalak Air Base is the last Russian air base, and it's not terribly well defended. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it so that the tanks are here for the Germans, tanks are here for the Germans. Russian tanks will come in from here and from here-ish, give or take. We'll have support units coming across this bridge for the Germans. The Russians will have been kind of pushed back because their only other two air bases are actually a good distance back. And so we'll probably have this guy and this guy be their air bases. Everything here is going to be really tight. I think that like a mission that moves from, here to here in distance is really too short for a real multiplayer mission. But this is supposed to be demonstrative as opposed to entirely realistic. It only takes a little bit of work, and maybe we'll even do it in a further video, to push back the bases to here and make it be more meaningful. But to do so requires me telling you a little bit more about the system, and we're just not going to do that till the next mission. Mostly, honestly, for no other reason than to keep these instructionals progressive and simplistic. So what we need to do now is start moving the units. So the units that I want to move first are going to be the tanks, because I feel like that, to me, anybody can build a mission any way that they want, but to me the tanks are kind of like, man, that's what's happening. So I'm going to take a slight divergent action and just move away these icons so they just don't bother me. And then we'll go right here. And the first thing I'm going to grab is going to grab the Russian tanks that are connected to, kind of like, this is their air-to-ground units, kind of. It's basically a collection. I mean, I like to think of it as a division. I don't really know the military term that would be appropriate, and of course I'm sure that military term is different for different nationalities. But essentially it's a group of units that would be working together. They might be Air Force and Army that are working together, but like, this is the kind of like, it would be the tanks plus the Sturmovix, like. So in here we have air-to-ground units, and we also have tank units. And these are going to be defensive, because the Germans are really the ones that have pushed through. They've already got tanks on this side of the Don, and Kalak is our last air base, and it's probably going to get taken. And really what we want to do is just slow them. And so the way that this mission is kind of going to be set up is that the tanks will be, coming from the Russians, will be a little bit far. And it's very likely that the German tanks will make it to Kalak. So I want these tanks to come in from the north, and I'm just literally going to rotate the system and put them here. And this is very general. Like, we'll be moving these waypoints and units around in a second, but just not now. We're really just putting things very generally in place. And then for their air-to-ground units, I want them to be defensive. So we go in here, and these are the Sturmovix. I don't want PE2s anymore. I want just L2s in this situation. This is going to be the only AIs will be L2s, and we'll deck them out a little bit. No reason not to. They got some skins here. We'll give these guys are the more aggressive ones, so how about we give them definitely a turret That's the rear turret, by the way. And we'll give them the beefy rockets and the 23s, making them not too, terribly heavy, and also giving them some ammo. The AI is actually really a remarkable. In fact, that's probably a complaint from some people. It is amazingly accurate. I think it's cool though. It makes it hard, and it makes you be intelligent. It makes you say, "I don't want to be in the cone of fire, no matter what," which is not unwise. So I find though that they are very heavy-handed on the triggers, so I don't really like to give them the 37s. It's very tempting to give them the 37s on the Stukas. Man, this is such a side topic. Anywho, we'll make these L2s that have 23s and some rockets, and we'll make these guys much more generic. They won't have a back turret. We'll give them some bombs, and we'll just give them like maybe 650s. Yeah, let's do that, and some skins. I do often like to, and you can totally do this, is like take one, make it an ace. Oh, I already did with that one. Like you'll see this one's probably normal. Yep. I like to take one that's an ace and give it a slightly different skin. And then it's cool. Then you have a unique plane out there. They'll still fly with the other groups. It's just like, you know what I'm saying? So in this situation with, ooh, I don't want to mess with that. With just a collection of L2s here, some a little stronger, some a little weaker, like we might want to lower these. I kind of showed this in the last one. I think 1700 is high enough. That's pretty high. They'll often be considerably lower than that. But that also gives them a good degree of safety, and it gives them the capacity, especially with the AI. I feel is like has a high tendency to dive, and so like giving them a little bit of extra height. This also forces them to after dive to start climbing again. So like I like to put it for ground attack. I like to put it a little higher. If you were to do level bombers right here, you would actually put it at the elevation you wanted. Like like if you wanted like just below contrail, like 4,700, just put it at 4,700. But for ground attackers, I like to put it maybe like 200 or 300 meters above where I actually want the planes to fly. And I find that they'll be there most of the time. It does mean that occasionally you'll see L2s a little higher than would be, I think it's traditional or something. Since we're actually building this mission, if you saw the last one, this setup was like totally not real. We're going to put the waypoints where we actually want them. And so we're going to have these German tanks, and they're going to be here and here. And I want to make sure that we hit them. And I want to make sure, like, we're going to hit one or the other one. So I'm actually going to keep them very much on their path. Give them a little bit of a tilt, like so. And I'm going to give them a real home. And the real home's going to be way back here. And there we go. We did it. Like, that's it. I have the specials on this system turned off. I talked about the specials a little bit last time. Those are basically events that when these units kind of react with the world, they can create signals that say, hey, let's have all these units act together and do something special. Like in this case, it might be for like ground attackers like this, it might be that they call in level bombers. In fact, that's actually generally what it's going to be for ground attackers. Air flights might cover, air-to-air flights might pull in a collection of like maybe 3 planes that do a patrol, or 3 planes that come in and do a cover, 4 planes, whatever. You can make the special be whatever you want, but right now we're not messing with specials too much, because I just want to show how the mission is built. So now we have our ground attackers. They're all set. That's it. You're done. You don't ever have to touch them again. And then we're going to do our defensive tanks. And sometimes, like, oh, I already kind of set these up. This is very general. Like, we don't want to set this up precisely until we have all the units kind of, like, generally in place, and then we can get down with the various things that you kind of have to fidget around with. Our air-to-air units I'll wait on, because I can only get these other ones set up first. These are our other set of tanks. In here, I want them to get the German tanks that we're going to put south of Kalak. In these, we need to give a little bit of angle. We'll go like this, and like they have their area attack and stuff like that, and all that detail we'll set up a little bit later, not much later. And then our front base. In this one, we're going to be really interesting, and we're just going to put the front base right where the battle is. And I think that's fine. That gives the Russians in this online mission a significant disadvantage, and that their frontline base might just be being destroyed by tanks, and very difficult to take off from. Giving them really only one, at least in this mission, multiplayer base to take off from. So like that might be something we want to change, and maybe I'll show that in the next video of like adding a base. It's not complicated or hard. But it's more detail than I want to give in this one talk. So then we're going to do our 2 ground units. We're going to do an on-road unit and a supply unit. So we're going to set up where our supply base is going to be. This is our rear base. As I said, we're going to make this a very tight mission. You know, it's only going to live within like what? 5, 10. It's only going to live within like 30 kilometers, 25 kilometers. Super tiny. Realistically, we would put these way further apart from each other. Um, but for demonstrative purposes, this is fine. So this base will be here. Um, and then we'll do the on-road units. And I like to set up the on-road units. These are like, they can really be anything. You can make them be tanks. You can make them be regular trucks, cars, like whatever you want. Right now I have one that's kind of just a truck, one group that's kind of trucks, and one group that's kind of offensive. They have those like those really cool Russian Gatling guns. Um, and on the German side, they have the Flak 38s trucks. And so we're going to make these trucks move between the 2 bases. We'll probably actually have them go this way because of the danger they'd be in going this way. Although this way could be really cool because we have our tanks protecting them, and you could just end up with very interesting situations. It's conceivable I'll make them go all the way around and come back up this way a little bit. But we'll work that out when we do. We'll just set them right here for now. And then our train. And I suspect our train, which I have running right along here, I have no real reason to move that at all. Like, there's a track, there's a track, there's a track. Nothing else is entering our area of engagement as much as this is. I might pull it forward a bit. In fact, I will. I'll pull it forward a bit and have it go down here. So we will move it. I lied. Now the Germans. Oh, I should do our Russian air-to-air unit first. Air-to-air does have an SP1, but I'm going to remove it. And by the way, that's how easy this shit is. Sorry for cursing. I love cursing. Like, that's just gone, and it's not a problem. Nothing broke right there. It just means that when the special trigger gets hit here, nothing happens, and that doesn't matter. You don't have to implement any of the commands when you implement this system of being aggressive, defensive, running, improving, weakening, doing either of your specials. Those do trigger buttons, but those buttons don't do anything. It is highly advisable to set up that you tell back to the system. These are the buttons to remind you from the first video. These are the buttons that send messages back to the system. These buttons get hit by the system, and the system will hit these buttons. So, like, if you build your own modules, just know that. You don't even have to mess with it. Just know as soon as you wire them in, your system will hit them. The next video will show you how to do those wirings. This goes straight out and says, hey, I'm ready to do a special. This says I'm ready to do a special too, and this says I'm ready to run. Those are very advisable to set, in particular run. If you're building your own thing, we're going to move in our air units, and these are air-to-air. Of course, like air-to-air units here are kind of questionable for a multiplayer mission. Like, maybe we actually want these to be air-to-ground. And you know what? No, we're going to leave them air. Air-to-air is great when you have a very low number of players. So, like, you know, that just gives a full set of... Honestly, I fly these things all by my lonesome, and they're great fun. Speaking of which, and to go on yet another aside, single-player missions are coming. Single-player missions have some specialized setups and allow me to do some things I can't do in multiplayer and vice versa, including, like, scripting some things effectively. So, like... those guys are coming. This system is incredibly useful for single player and was initially designed with only single player in mind. But multiplayer is cool, so that's that. Let's put these guys, I want them to be actually quite defensive. So they're going to be behind a bit from where, if we want to look at the ground units, we'll just check them out here. See, we move them considerably further forward, considerably more offensive. Our air-to-air is going to be much more defensive because we really want to make sure that we're stopping any incoming bombers, because we're really worried about our airfield, and we kind of count on our airfield being lost. That's just kind of how this mission is. It's like the Russians know Kalak is probably a lost airfield, but man, do they want to stop them as much as they can, because they don't want the Germans getting far up this way. And this is wide open territory in here. So this is a pretty good setup, actually. All I have to do is move these back from their position. That's it. Air-to-air is done. Air-to-ground is done. We'll have to set those tanks down carefully. We did these tanks. We got our front base set. We got our rear base set. We're now going to put up the Germans. Let's say the German air-to-air is aggressive. Most certainly. In this situation, they want, again, SP1. This is the special. We don't care about them. We're shrinking the mission like that too and making it more efficient. We're going to put them back, and we're going to move them forward. And we want it like they're high and mighty, like the rapper or the phrase. So they're going to come in and just dominate. Their main goal, in fact, we'll drop them a little bit. Their main goal should be to eliminate any air force that's coming after them and to clear the skies for their bombers. So they want to be high. They're actually happy if they are above everyone else and never have to engage, but they will totally drop and rain death. So let's make sure they're tough ones. I think they got 109s. Yeah, G2s, excellent for elevation. And 190s, which I mostly put it in because the AI on the 190s has changed recently, and it is much, much, much more interesting. It's actually really cool. If you played Rise of Flight, there was the Gavagi, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, did significant and really amazing mod for the Spads and the SE5s, a couple of the other Boom and Zoomers, probably the Falls, and it just changed how they flew, and it changed how they flew in just the right way. And the 190 is like doing something very similar. I mean, it's still AI, it's still like instantaneously differential from a human, but when they fly the right way, it's great. So that's that. And air to ground, these are going to be their Sturmoviks, and these should have HEs. So, and Stukas, and we're going to want them to be a little bit high. Cool, Stukas and HEs, I'm going to give them some loadouts. I want some big bombs. Let's actually just give them this, the 1-250, and we'll give one of them the Mega. It's never wrong to see the 2500. That thing comes out, it can destroy entire emplacements of AA. It's so awesome. And then the Stukas, we'll do something really similar with. We'll make sure, I like the 500. Yeah, that's the good loadout for them in my opinion. And we'll also give them an ace. And this guy maybe will have a Satan, so yeah, put it in there. Move these guys back, and I'm going to have them kind of come up from the south just a touch, because I really want them to brush both of the Russian tanks that are coming down, like that. Cool. And then you get the idea, like, these sets, it's random which one goes. This one, this one, this one, or this one. So, like, on some flight-throughs, they'll be hitting the southern tanks, and on some flight-throughs, they'll be hitting the northern tanks. And then their tanks are totally important to set. Shocking, I know. We want these tanks hitting clock. That's what we want. And we want them hitting it fast. So we're just going to put it like there. Well, this would be brutal. Like, we want that to be an airbase that is terrifying to take off from, if even possible. I mean, dude, awesome. Cool. And so now we kind of got this mostly in place, really, with the exception of our two bases. So for our front base, I think I want to go really forward, just as stated, and our rear base will keep right here. I'm good with that. Sorry, I know that I'm seeing something that you probably can't see. The rear base is right there, the supply base. And then our on-road, these are going to be our supplies. And here's a little good moment to kind of take an aside, yet again, and discuss like how these things can be done differently. Like, I actually really want to put another ground unit in here for both sides, like on-road unit. Like, I want to have, like we have right now, trucks that are probably going to move a bit like this for the Russians, and trucks are going to move a bit like this for the Germans. And I think that it would be really good to have a German truck here. And I think it would be really good to have a Russian truck here, and that would help us extend this mission and be able to put bases back here where there's not just bland space with nothing going on. There's always something going on, and it's also then also dangerous for enemies because all the trucks produce artillery, and some of them have artillery just on the truck themselves. So like as you do that, it becomes more dangerous. The way to do that is really simple. Like really, you just go here to like one of these bigger units. You grab whatever it is you want to copy, and you copy and you paste it. And it takes a few seconds. And then you wire it up. And I'm sorry to go into this and then not go finish, but like we're not going to show the wiring up. It's super simple, but it's another topic, and it's a topic that has other complexities to it. So we're just going to leave it alone for now. But like this mission would be much more ideal, I think, with those trucks. And this is the great thing about this system is like you can think about that now. Like you can have not have thought about that until right now, and you can just do it. Like we really just did 80% of the time of copying in a brand new unit that totally and completely acts appropriately. Nothing to be, with the exception of this number of things being wired. That's it. That's it. You connect those units and you're done. That said, we're not going to do that right now, and we're just going to continue on this mission. The next step is... Sorry, I'm looking at time. Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good. The next step here is just to lay out the unit specifically. Some of these are much easier to lay out. As in the airplanes, we're already done. We did it like that. It was just like that. Tanks are pretty simple too. We're going to do that next. And for this, I needless to say, I like to go to this. And so these are going to be, and it's really good to like kind of like open up the other one too. Right, so we're going to open up the German tanks too. Oh, it's the other ones. Right? And we want to make sure that these guys are going to run into each other. But you notice I still have these selected, so I can think about it. My German tanks are going to be generally here, and they're going to be attacking this airbase. So my Russian tanks need to defend that airbase. So I actually want them to be closer to the airbase, because really these German tanks can't do shit until they're like here. So, just check out how easy this is. We're going to go into the Russian airbase. We're going to go to the Russian tanks. Oops, I'm sorry. I do get a little lost in the tree sometimes. We're going to grab them all. We're going to move them to be a little bit more horizontal. We're going to call their endpoint like here, and we're going to let them come nice and close, but not too close. We don't run into this stuff. And you also have to be careful when you're covering roads, which is part of the reason this is. And here we will be riding over roads, but the only thing that will be coming over these roads is Germans, so we are totally happy to do so. And then we want to be able to attack if we get a special. And these will be where the German ground units are. Most likely we'll move this again because we'll probably move the German ground units that you can see. You can see there various statics down there. And then the next step with these is you ensure, I think our space is good. Yeah, I like it. You ensure that all this is artillery, that it's not living in trees. See, there's a little bit of tree right there. You might even want to give it a, oh, see, trees. Trees are the lamest and the coolest. Sorry, lower X. Cool. So we're out of the trees. These guys are bit in the trees. We're going to move them down a bit. And like it's really pretty safe. I mean, very dramatic movements can cause problems, but like they got to be pretty dramatic. And you can generally tell, like you can see these wires and the arrows. If those guys went over something, it'd be bad. You can always hit F9 and give it a good look and make sure that you're not like just horrendous. And when you're really, really putting a mission together, like giving the final touches, although I don't recommend that at this stage. Like you do want to play through it a couple times, make sure everything looks and works functionally, and then you come out and make sure everything's really, really clean. Always polish last, you know. Kind of works for everything. So then the next bit that we're going to do is set up the secondary tank, which is going to be defensive for the Russian, and that's these guys. And yeah, so like I mean, as I said, we place these guys very generally. They're just a little bit off of what we want. We probably actually want them to be a little bit closer and coming in behind. Yeah, like this. This. And they're probably going to come over here to hit the Germans. Make sure they're not going to run into anything. They're not. All that looks really great. And if you end up having a situation where like you want to place things like to move around a city, you really can. It can take a little bit of finesse, but it's very rare that you can't, I think would be probably the right way to put it. We're going to set this back a little bit. So these guys, what that really means is like that actually has a functional meaning. That means that since these are the repair trucks, they're going to be going a longer distance and the repair on these will be slower. And that's reasonable because the Russians are extended and the Germans are not. Well, I guess the Germans are extended too, but you get my idea. They're also kind of in a corner. So then we're set up there, and that's done. Now the tanks for the Russians are entirely done. And we're going to do the tanks for the Germans next. And we're really doing this in this order because that's what's easiest for me. You guys can do it any order you want when you do it. There's no obligate component to that at all. But this is the same thing. I want these Germans to be like totally brutal. We're going to shorten up their distance so they're going to be like much more quick to act. And can cycle in as you shorten this, as you shorten the distance it goes, when it moves, when the tanks move their entire distance and they come back, they do deactivate, and as soon as they deactivate, then new ones can be added. So as you shorten the distance, you actually increase the number of tanks that you can push through. And we want them to be pretty brutal. So we're going to go like this, ensure that they're coming up. And in this way, they're also less afraid to be destroyed by the Russian tanks, because they'll be tighter, they'll be closer to their artillery, and the Russians will have a little bit of difficulty defending. But that's it. We're done there. And then we're going to get the westward tanks. The tanks are, of course, moving eastward, but from the west. And I'm sure there's some like little details and stuff that you guys are going to have questions about. I'm like, that's totally cool. Questions are great. They're kind of my favorite thing. Setting these guys up, making sure that the artillery and stuff isn't in the trees. It might be a little bit, but we're not bad. So this is going to be an interesting one, is that it'll make it spawn out. And this is a super short, and we're going to make this one be gross. And by gross, I mean like it is going to go into Russian territory in entirety. It's going to drive right through that air base and not care, which is cool. Germans should be pretty brutal here. We do, though, want to make sure we have one little problem that we're going to leave in place, which is that I'm going to set the supply lines for the Germans to come through like this. So there's a good likelihood that they're going to hit each other. They're not like, it's unlikely that the trucks are going to directly hit each other, but they're going to influence each other in their movements, and it's very conceivably that the support will block the ability of the artillery to move, of the armor to move forward. Cool. So now we have a couple things that are a little bit longer to set up, and these are the last things to set up. So we're going to make sure, that's not true, I'm going to do the bases last, but we're going to do the on-roads now. On-roads are a little bit of work, because you really need to put these things on the road. So I think that what I would like to do is have the German on-road come from up here. And then I'm just literally going to move it through. This is its 1. It's 2. These are numbered so that it's really easy. 3. It's very ideal to put these on intersections. 5. Let's see, where's 6? 6. Oh. 6 will move up here. And I don't care which way it goes, actually. It's conceivable it'll route it this way or this way, and that's cool. I'm happy with both. And 7 we'll put just south of here, Rumina. And then we do a little bit of cleanup here to make sure that all the stuff is good. These are the actual units. These are like the trucks. And it's important to put them directly on the road. We will clean it up very soon. That's its first waypoint. And these are all, this is like the base and the artillery that goes with it. I like to, with the trucks, put this stuff forward, but somewhere along kind of where it goes. This one, because we don't want to come back to it, we are going to go ahead and switch styles and put it up. And this also dissuades and protects against the Russians really moving forward with their airplanes, be they multiplayer or AI. And then we just line these guys up. One goes here. No, one goes like here. And this gives it a couple of artilleries to... We're good. We need to get it just right, though. So we go like this. That's how we do it. When we set it to this, we can see it. Now, one thing that's frustrating, and hello devs, I want this too, is that when you have too many units, and I know that this mission is insanely huge, you can't see any longer the direction of things unless you zoom out. So see how you can't see that direction line unless I'm zoomed out? So then I have to zoom back in to make sure that the waypoint is pretty much right on the road. These are very intolerant of being off the road, in my experience. I do find, though, that they are very tolerant of being pointed the wrong direction. So that's something. Cool, that looks great. So see, now this one is interesting because it's, so I said in the previous video, I probably didn't mention in this one, that all the artillery has, or all the on-roads have, every other waypoint they hit produces artillery for them. So when, of course, when you're in buildings, you want to put that artillery out on the outside. And then this one's a little extra special because this is the final one, so we want to get it right on there. And we also want to set it up to be really easy for the trucks to make it into their tents. So move the tents like this. Right, so it'll hit right here, and then they'll go into the tents. Just like good little campers. Cool, so that's done. We'll do the base supply. This is the supply base for the Germans. And this one I think is actually already set up. It is. That's because I had set it up previously, but I mean, I think you get the idea. You put the airfield field here, you put the complex trigger here, and you put your base stuff here however you want, and you put your statics here however you want. And I would, of course, fill this out with more junk, but that's not really instructive, so we'll pass. I think that the front base, though, is in a new location, so that'll take a little bit more work. Yep. So this is an interesting one because you'll see, I mean, I just happen to know this because I looked at it a lot. You'll see that right here is actually a big hill. So where you put your artillery can actually matter. Like if you put your artillery here, it looks ridiculous. Like it's on a super steep slope. So we're going to move the artillery back like this. This is a good example of how, like, man, seriously, you can just move stuff however you want. This is a frontline airbase, and there's a good chance that the Germans or Russians are going to make it back here. So it's reasonable to put this stuff super close to each other, and that means that its repair cycle is way short. That's like as you're building these and as you learn and get more comfortable with these, and for anyone that does it, it's really important for how the system works, and it's a really good thing that the system does that it's very distance dependent. It makes it a little bit realistic. It allows you to have a priority system effectively. So like, like repair units that are closer to what they're repairing than repair units that are far away, excuse me, have, a much higher priority as a target. Sorry about that. It's a lot of talking for a guy like me. So we now have to do the same thing with the Russians. The Germans are done. They're entirely in place. Like this is a built mission for the Germans. The Russians are almost done. Russian front base, I know I need to set up. And then we'll need to set up the Russian on ground. And so these guys are kind of in trouble. And so I'm going to kind of set them back as if they are. in trouble. Where the artillery is behind the base. Is not maybe necessarily all that greatly supported. Pull this off though, and we'll get this off the road. That looks great, but it does still have a short repair cycle, and that's good, because otherwise the Russians would really be in trouble. We'll have them take off this direction, because why not? That looks like it's about 330, 350, 340, I think. So you can't see the arrow. It's the worst. Anywho. These are the statics here. This is part of the reason I don't put the airplanes in these statics, is because it makes it really easy to just set it up. I can often just do this. I mean, sometimes I gotta move stuff around, but... And by statics, I mean like the static airplanes. I just add those in later. I like to make sure that I can cover both air bases that are both airfields. This means you can land here or here, and your wounded are supply. Since this is a frontline air base, it would be supply. Cool, so that's done. And now we need to move the on-road and the train. So the Russian on-road, I wanted to move between these two air bases. We'll switch back to this because it's easy and great. Thank you for that, development people. I'm just going to rotate this thing because I want them to start over there and move over this way. It was obviously set up for the last mission to go the opposite direction. Those are our actual units. So this is like kind of the defensive units that go with it. I kind of decide whether or not I put the defensive and base units to go with something like an on-road near where the on-road starts or not, based on where the on-road starts. So I want the on-road to start near a base that already has artillery and stuff. I want to put this stuff here-ish to dissuade the Germans from moving just too deep into our territory. You know, like it's good defense. So these guys are going to go on the road right here. I'll move them to 1, 2. This is probably 3. No, I see what happened. 3. Let's move them this way. 4, 5, 6, and 7. And this is interesting because now they'll be running it. There's a really good chance, provided the timing is correct, that they'll be running in parallel, which is awesome. It's really awesome when that happens. With like, you know, guns here and guns here. Know what I'm saying? So now we need to clean all this up. You only do that here. Boop. Boop. Done. See, look, this is earlier, and it works the right way. It's like where it's loaded in the list too has a great deal to do with like whether or not it works how you should or slash you expect. See how much easier that is? In fact, I would even just say it's possible as opposed to not possible. Just seeing which way I want to go. I did want to go north. Okay, cool. You can see how these on-roads take considerably longer than the other ones do to set up. But it's still absurdly faster than doing this stuff all by hand, so there's that. Alright, sweet. This guy comes up here, goes like this. And then this is our last one for this. And we want to put them right here. And then make sure that all these guys are ready to enter their tanks, their tents. So maybe we'll just move it a little bit south. Cool. So now the on-road's done. Now we're not taking the time to do things like change these units to be different things, but you most certainly can if you wish. It looks like we should take the time though to move this out of the trees. I'm going to have this, being that it's not well supported, not lots of units are near it, have a little bit longer repair time. So we'll set this guy back a good ways. That's good. It also gives it a wider spread, wider coverage, so that's good too. And then we're going to double check the bases because I don't remember, and then we'll set up the train. That base is good. No, this base is probably the one that's bad. Yeah, look at that. It's terrible. And this base can take a little bit more setup than the normal one. Put this guy all the way back, and it's 160. I did not mean to ungroup that. That's very unfortunate. Let's say set group is working. Yes. Now we can set this stuff up. And let's say I'm doing this like super generic. But I find that like taking a great deal of detail and setting up everything just so before you even know that everything works the way you want it is kind of silly. Try to make sure the mission interacts in the appropriate way, and then you can add in all the color. So that's that for that. And the train, fortunately, takes only a moment. And it's really the same as doing the on-road, only simpler. So for those of you not terribly interested in the little nitty-gritty details, you should know that this is pretty much all you need to know for building a mission. It's done. As soon as I get this train completed, I will be calling this done. Got some backup artillery in there. That's one of the nice things about the trains. I do have these last few like slow down. And like admittedly this is like kind of generic where it's going, but who cares? So first thing we'll do is get the trains on the tracks. Only one of these trains will be going. Set them however you want. Only one will be going at a time. One is the strong one is the weak one, just like all the other units. For trains, fortunately, the direction on these seems to have no bearing whatsoever, so it doesn't even matter if they don't show up. Oh yeah, I'm colorblind, so seeing things is really hard for me sometimes. You guys can probably all see that track. I can't. Okay. That's it. This is a mission that runs. In fact, in just a second, I'm going to put it up live, and you can go play it. Like, that's how much we just literally built a mission in. I'm sure it was longer than 20 minutes, like I said. 40 minutes, okay. But I had a lot of talking to do. Thank you very much.